Today let's talk playing blues rhythm on the mandolin. We'll demonstrate it in 3 different distinct styles, one playing straight 4s rhythm, the second being a down and up shuffle strum, and the third being an embellished style in the style of guitar player Jimmy Reed, which translates nicely to the mandolin. All of the styles of rhythm will be presented in the key of E, but the chords used will be all in closed positions, meaning there will be no open strings, and therefore they can be transferred to any other key. We'll start by developing rhythm grooves for a 12-bar blues in the key of E, where all the chords are played as 7th chords. This type of progression is sometimes called a cut blues, since it immediately cuts to the 4 chord or the A7 chord in the second measure, rather than staying on E. The fingerings for our first chord selections will be based on what is known as close voicings, where the notes of the chord you are changing to are close to the notes that you are currently holding. Here's an E7 chord that uses all 4 fingers, and all 4 notes of the E7 chord are here, starting with the 5th, the root, the flatted 7th, and the 3rd. And switching to the A7, our first finger will play 2 notes on both the 4th and 3rd strings, and fingers 3 and 4 will simply move back 1 fret. And we now have a root, a 5th, a 3rd, and the flatted 7th of the A7 chord. So E7, going to A7. If you were playing this A chord and switching to the A7, you simply would bring in your 2nd finger. But we're trying to connect our chords, and when we do that in this shape, it's going to be easier to just move fingers 3 and 4 back 1 fret. This will be the same fingering you'll use for your B7 chord. Move it up 2 frets, B7. The strum pattern we will use creates what is known as a stomp blues rhythm, where you simply play 4 downstrokes. Each strum is staccato, so you lift the pressure of your fingers after strumming. And one last element, as in much mandolin playing, your rhythm will have accents on 2 and 4. We will now demonstrate the rhythm being played over a practice track, so feel free to jump in and play along whenever you're ready. Going back to our original chord chart, notice that our E7, A7, and B7 chords are referred to as 1, 4, and 5 chords. With all of the notes being fretted, these are movable chords. Move your E7 up 1 fret, you now have an F7 chord. 4 chord is B flat, 5 chord is C7. So keep that in mind as you wish to play in other keys. We now will take a look at some close voicing chords where the fingerings are played only on strings 4, 3, and 2. So be sure to dampen the first string. You can do that by letting your third finger, in this case, lightly touch against the first string to where that first string won't ring when you're strumming your chords. Notice here when we play this E7, first finger at the 6th fret, we're going to switch to our A7. We simply move fingers 1 and 2 down 1 fret while holding your third finger on the 7th fret. Each finger remains on their respective strings. The B7 will be, as before, the A7 moved up 2 frets. None of the fingers leave the strings. They simply move up or down. The notes that you are playing when you play this E7 chord are the flatted 7th, the 3rd, and the root. You don't have the 5th of the chord, it's still enough to define the sound as an E7. When moving to the A7 chord, you have the 3rd, the flatted 7th, and the 5th. You don't even have the root of the chord. A lot of times as mandolin players, we're playing over the top of the other instruments. The other instruments are holding that root. The strum pattern we'll use this time through is known as the shuffle strum. In shuffle strumming, you maintain a constant down and up, but with the downstrokes lasting a little longer than the upstrokes, which create the shuffle rhythm. Notice too that we still maintain our accent on beats 2 and 4. We'll also introduce the concept of playing a turnaround here. A turnaround occurs when you get to the end of the progression and the chord you play suggests that you're about to start the progression all over again. Thus the term turnaround. Simply going to B7 implies that we'd like to get things back to E. We can enhance this effect on the last measure of the B7 by coming into it all the way from the A7, finishing on the B7. So we'll demonstrate the concept of the turnaround starting on the last line of the progression. B7, A7, E7, and the turnaround. As we did before, we now have a practice track for you to practice your shuffle strum rhythm. Just a quick note that these three shapes can also be thought of as 1, 4, 5. So you have your E7 as a 1, A7 is 4, B7 is 5. Move it back a couple frets, you'll have D7 as your 1, G7 as a 4, A7 as a 5. So again, you can move these shapes to all kinds of other keys. Another approach to blues rhythm playing is to add embellishments that you hear the old-time guitar players such as Jimmy Reed add to their playing. We can do that by holding an E modal chord, first finger on both strings 2 and 3 at the 2nd fret, second finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. To that I will add my 3rd finger on the 6th fret, which happens to turn this into a 6th chord, back and forth from the modal to the 6th. That's our shuffle strum. If I were a guitar player, I'd be thinking about moving my fingers over to get the 4 chord. As a mandolin player, you have to move them up 5 frets on the same set of strings. Eventually, when you need the 5 chord rhythm, you could take the same idea, move it over 1 set of strings. You should be able to hear how this rhythm pattern worked its way into early rock and roll. Sticking with the blues, here's a 2-measure rhythm pattern, works against the E chord. Adding your pinky to the 7th fret creates the 7th chord sound. And of course that would move up and all over just like our other licks. You can also find the 6th and the flatted 7th notes an octave higher than where we were. So you can make up riffs off of that. Another common embellishment you hear is sliding into a chord. So when it's time to go to this A7 chord, we'll start 1 fret lower. You'll often hear that connection as well when you go from a B7 on the last line of the progression down to the A7. You hit the B flat 7 on the way down. Sometimes your rhythm can fill in between the vocal phrases. So here I'm holding my 3-string E7 chord, and I'm going to hit a series of triplets. Takes me into my next chord. So notice too I had a little swell in the playing there. Dynamically start soft. When the progression gets to the turnaround, you can sometimes just play the notes right along with the guitar or other instruments. This turnaround lick, along with all the other phrases we just went over, are made up entirely of fretted notes. That's why we chose to go to the pinky here on the 7th fret rather than the open 3rd string, because now we will have a movable lick. Move it up 3 frets and you have a G lick. So this time our practice track will be more like a demonstration to where we show you how you could fit in all these licks we just went over.